Hi, this question is for Devin Grayson. How did you get into comic books?
Let me back it up. As much as I hate to admit it, this all started a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. You heard me right, guys. I'm talking about Star Wars. None of that prequel shit. I'm talking about George Lucas, 1977 Star Wars. My favorite character, I'm gonna have to say, is Han Solo. Han Solo kicks ass. I don't mean literally in the plot of the movie, I'm talking about the cool factor. I knew it when I was 7 years old, and I'm just as sure of it now. I can still remember standing with a tree branch lightsaber squinting in the sun outside of Zach Borgen's house in the summer of '77. Zach wanted to be Luke, and we were in his yard, so that was fine. That was a given. But Jacob and I had the entire rest of the cast left to argue over.
I'll be hard! But that means I'm gonna be Leia. Right. But I don't wanna be Leia.
Well, I sure ain't gonna do it, sweetheart. I remember my throat tightening as Jacob turned to Zach, desperate to impute femininity to me.
But she's the girl. Well, she is kind of more like a Han. Yes!
Growing up, I read detective novels because of Sherlock Holmes. I watched fiction because of Han and the original Battlestar Galactica Starbuck. These characters, even though reckless, they have this well-being for someone else, even when doing so is somewhat against their better judgment. In my 20s, I discovered, devoured, and forged a career in comic books because, and only because, of Batman's devoted, not quite son, Robin. I still play pencil and D10 RPGs at least once a week so that I can be various tragic heroes protecting with side-like devotion their doomed loves. And although some tanks will argue that they're leaders, I play computer games for the sheer joy of jumping in front of a friend's avatar to doofully pull and pound on whatever MOB they're directed me toward. I'm also enough of a geek not to want to stop and explain what tank, RPG, IRL, pull, MOB, or TS mean. Even no voice geek vocabulary is carefully guarded as a secret handshake. Besides, you have to earn your geekdom comprehension.
How does it feel to be a woman in a male dominated industry?
I have nothing to compare the experience to. Having never been a female in a female dominated industry or a male in any industry at all, I can easily give you examples, both positive and negative, of the impact my sex has had on my work environment. Early in my career, the novelty of my gender probably helped me open some doors. It also spawned a baseless and nasty internet rumor that I'm sure would be familiar to successful women the world over about how I, being a female and therefore apparently incapable of possessing either skill or talent to get this job. I can give you statistics saying that, for example, in the US, the percentage of comic book readers, 25% of them are female. In the overall comic book profession, women make up about 12% of that. And there are only 7% female authors that contributed to the new DC comics. Another example I can give is when I was overjoyed to be invited to serve on conversation panels side by side with my male colleagues, and frustrated later in the evenings during convention-related social events when I was suddenly expected to socialize with the wives and girlfriends of those same colleagues while the boys talk shop. And to be fair, it is rarely a matter of exclusion on the part of the men, but rather an effort toward inclusion on the part of the women that nonetheless take me out of some important industry conversation. I generally try to avoid the whole female selling point. But then, of course, my being a female probably is the most socially relevant characteristic of my work. The best way to persuade someone that my work is unique is to have them read it. I've never known what to say when a male comic fan, caught off guard by the gender ambiguity of my first name, approaches me, wide-eyed, at a conversation signing table to inform me, "You're a girl?" Once I glanced down, astonished at my breasts, before knocking my chair over backwards and leaping to my feet with a scream.
but most of the time I just try to smile.
I write comic books for a living, which is apparently a novel thing for a female to do. I had no idea that was the case until I created the first ongoing Batman title to be developed and written by a woman.
Often, the choice of whether or not to advertise my femaleness is taken out of my hands by the very framework of the setting in which I'm doing the selling. I'm frequently invited to participate in panels and sometimes even conversations dedicated to highlighting the work of females in comics. Sometimes I participate, sometimes I don't. Obviously, it's helpful to bring attention to the work my female peers and I do, but I also bristle when I glance around an all-female panel and find no interest or quality linking the work of the people sitting on it other than their sex. I recently had someone try to coax me into participating in an event by mentioning that Ramona Fradden would be in attendance. Fradden is a wonderfully talented American comic book and comic strip artist who worked on Aquaman in the 50s and 60s. She's a great addition to any comic conversation and someone I definitely enjoy meeting. But the only possible question you could ask both of us with any chance of mutual relevance would be along the lines of, you guessed it, what's it like to be a female in a ... How much of a chance would we have to move the conversation away from gender politics and into a discussion about our actual work? The kind of conversation our male peers have all the time. How different would my experience in this industry be if I were male? She's a visual artist. I'm a writer. She was at the peak of her career when I started mine. We have never worked on the same project or even, as far as I know, on the same characters. But we're supposed to sit on a panel together because we're both women in comics? What would the panel really be about? Would I even have been interested in writing about superheroes? These are questions that everyone should really think about.